Hi, I'm Phil Curry. The thoughts in this presentation are the result of a 45-year career which has allowed me to gain experience that I'd like to share. This presentation focuses specifically on a management process for successful enterprises. As with all my presentations, these are just my own ideas, but they have evolved over a lifetime of experience. I hope they are of use to you. I learned from my career as a management consultant that many documented plans are nowhere near as important as the management actions that occur within an organisation on a daily basis. The best definition of organisational culture that I ever heard was the way we do things around here. So my focus in this presentation is on describing the components of the way we do things around here, rather than presenting what I think a business plan might look like. The truth is, anyone can write a business plan. The problem is that mostly they are put in a filing cabinet and they are rarely used to guide or improve organisational performance. That's why my focus as a consultant increasingly became focused on organisational culture, and the reasons why I completed my PhD research. It was to understand the aspects of organisational culture that limited or contributed to the adoption of contemporary marketing practices within a business. This diagram illustrates the components that I consider to be appropriate to form part of the management practices of a successful organisation. You might disagree with some of the content, you might want to add something that is consistent with your own experience, and you might want to delete some of the elements that are consistent with mine. When you look at this diagram, you'll notice that some of the shapes are bounded with a solid line, and others are bounded with a dotted border. This is done to signify the areas in which the discipline of marketing is involved, indicated by the solid line. Let's consider the diagram in sections. Let's start with the 4 rectangles that I've labelled market intelligence. My definition of marketing, which I will show in the next slide, includes information about the market, competitors, and feedback from customers and non-customers, as well as frank reviews of the company's strengths and weaknesses compared to rivals. Information needs to be introduced into the organisation through formal and informal means on a regular basis. The provision of information allows management to make evidence-based decisions, and I believe that information and evidence-based decision making represent a powerful source of competitive advantage, because many organisations do not do this on a regular basis. Instead, they run on gut feel, instinct, and reaction to crises. I'm not saying that intuitive decision making is not important, because of course it is, but it will be so much more reliable if it is also informed by evidence. By formal and informal channels, I mean that some information may require specific market research activities to collect, whilst other information can be obtained informally from your sales and service staff, for example, who are probably visiting customers and non-customers every working day of the year and have much useful knowledge to share. So now let's consider the strategy component. Of course, strategy means different things to different people. From a marketing perspective, only 3 elements are really important, and they are positioning, target markets, and basis for growth. Strategy decisions really should not be changed frequently, because implementation of strategy normally requires a significant investment of time and cash, and making changes frequently can be confusing to the market and very expensive to implement successfully. Please allow me to explain the 3 elements of strategy highlighted in the model. By positioning, I'm referring to how the market sees your product along the price-quality continuum compared with the products of your rivals. Setting a low price that sends a signal of low quality in a market swamped with cheap imports is potentially a recipe for disaster. Setting a price that's too high, even with the highest possible quality, in a market in which value for money is the most important attribute, might also be a mistake. Usually, the optimum positioning lies somewhere between those 2 extremes. The point of this discussion is that the decision is yours, and that market research will allow you to identify and qualify the opportunities for different points of positioning. The second important component of strategy is the choice of target markets. Target markets can refer to segments of consumers and/or choice of distribution channels. It may also have a geographical implication, for example local, interstate, or international. Once again, market research allows you to identify target markets that are more attractive than others and provide indications of the positioning that is most likely to succeed in each. The third important component of strategy is basis for growth. This is a plan for capturing successive market segments, distribution channels or geographic regions that satisfy your desire for growth. It maps out a strategic plan to move from one to the next as specific milestones of growth are achieved. Now let's look at the section I've labelled Annual Tactics. These represent the annual plans that many businesses implement, and as you can see immediately below, are normally reviewed on a monthly basis. As key objectives are or are not achieved, management can decide to take corrective action as required. Now let's consider the section that I've labelled Organisational Culture. There is a substantial amount of research that supports the proposition that organisations that continue to learn are more successful than those that do not, and that organisations that share information broadly across all departments and allow personnel from all departments to have input into deciding how the business should respond to opportunities and threats will be more successful than those that do not. So this component is at the heart of the business management practice and reflects the organisational culture that facilitates the responsiveness of the organisation. This approach does not remove responsibility for information collection from the marketing department, but it certainly does reduce the reliance on decision making on any single department. The last thing I'd like to leave you with is a definition of marketing. This is my definition of marketing. It may be different to the definitions with which you are familiar. Definitions of marketing are often limited to outward-going communications, typically focused on selling and advertising. This overlooks the very important role that the discipline of marketing should play in any organisation. The very first section of my definition is understanding the current and future needs and wants of segments of the market, and that relates to the market intelligence section of the previous slide. Agribusinesses are often parts of value chains. Current thinking is that a value chain will replace single businesses as the units of competition, and if that's the case, then businesses in a value chain must work together to develop and deliver products, services and experiences that will meet the needs of identified target market members more effectively and efficiently than competitors. To achieve this, value chain actors need to be willing to collaborate, and that's where organisational cultures that facilitate learning and sharing of information comes into the definition, which of course is reflected in the organisational culture part of the previous model. The last few words talk about contributing to organisational objectives, which are often far more complex than a simple profit motive, and can include creating sustainable employment opportunities for family members, contributing to reduction of environmental harm, and making contributions to local and regional communities. Perhaps you can reflect on this definition and the extent to which it is enacted within your own organisation. Thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation. I'd be very happy to help agribusiness firms and value chains assess the degree to which they adopt contemporary models of business management practices, to assess the opportunities for improvement and to facilitate organisational change as appropriate. If you would like to engage with me in any way, I welcome your inquiry.